Hey scholars, welcome to our last section, which is 7.3, a super short section looking at how have we affected the world's terrestrial ecosystems. Just looking at the human impact on all these different terrestrial, which means land, ecosystems. That's what we're going to focus on today. So these are how if humans have disturbed most of the Earth's land. We've disturbed almost all of them. Deserts, grasslands, forests, and mountains. All of those major terrestrial ecosystems we have definitely impacted. There's one image that we're going to look at today, and let's supersize it so we can look at, I don't like that picture, let's go back to it. This one's a little bit more clear. The major human impacts on terrestrial ecosystems. We'll look at them individually. So starting with the deserts, we have large desert cities, aka like Las Vegas, Nevada. Soil destruction by off-road vehicles. They do a lot of dune buggies and sand rovers, that kind of stuff. We have major destruction there. Soil salinization from irrigation. Because we are always in need of food, we tend to still try to grow crops in arid climates, which is kind of dumb, but we do. And so we use water where we shouldn't and try to grow crops, and that causes soil salinization because of evaporation, which is not good. We also have depletion of groundwater because we have people living in desert cities. Their major resource for water is groundwater, and we'll talk about that next section when we look at the desert habitat in itself and looking at aquifers and groundwater when we get to our water chapters. Also land disturbance and pollution from mineral extraction. Also sand area, because it is loose, very good area for extraction of minerals. So that is another area where we impact deserts. Second one is grasslands. Obviously, biggest one, converting it to cropland, monoculture. We looked at that a little bit earlier in section 7.2. We also release CO2 to the atmosphere when we burn grasslands. A lot of times we use slash and burn methods where we cut it down, burn it, reneutralize whatever nutrients are left in the plants, we return to the soil, and then we grow again. So when we do that by burning, we release CO2, which is a greenhouse gas, causing global warming. Overgrazing by livestock. We also graze a lot of livestock out there to eat those small short grasses or tall grasses, depending on where you're at in the temperate grassland. And then also oil production and off-road vehicles and the Arctic tundra, which we're thinking of as moving to a major area of getting our oil extraction and using that for the oil industry. Next one is forest. Biggest one is for clearing for agriculture, livestock grazing, timber, and urban development. Mostly, in my mind, urban development is where we have our biggest impact, but we still use these forests for many different things: grazing, timber, agriculture. We've also converted a number of forests to tree farms, like Christmas tree farms and things of that nature. Monoculturing those, which is kind of dangerous if you have all one of the same species. It's makes your ecosystem more vulnerable to disease and pests. If one pest moves in and kills off all those trees, then you're left with nothing. So kind of dangerous to do. Damage from off-road vehicles. I don't know how many people I've seen in eastern North Carolina driving their big old awesome big swamp buggies and things like that, and big huge SUVs and trucks 4x4s, damaging the ecosystem just by driving as hard as they can through whatever terrain they can. Also pollution of forest streams, because we have human people living there in urban development. We have pollution by humans into forest streams, which eventually go out to the ocean, which is dangerous too. Our last one is the mountains. We use mountains mostly for timber extraction because we're using pine. We use a lot of pine for building, and pine grow very well in those cold, more higher elevation conditions. We use it for mineral extraction, literally, aka we can look at West Virginia is huge for this. That's a great example of this. Increasing tourism is another one, because if you leave a mountain intact, it looks beautiful. People go there all the time, like Yellowstone out in the mountains, to check out those. Urban air pollution, because you have people living in this region. As far as your habitat goes, that air mass moves upwards, and then literally will condense and kind of drop and kind of get impacted on the mountains. Increasing tourism, urban air pollution, again, increased ultraviolet radiation from ozone depletion. That's putting your freshwater sinks, which are at the top of the mountains, at risk of melting, and then increasing your sea levels, which is very dangerous, could cause flooding, like in Louisiana. And then soil damage from off-road vehicles, as long as we all like that rocky mountain terrain to travel along. So that ends section in chapter 7 and in total. If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to email me, and we'll see you again soon.